Guys, I'm here to tell you, there are no 19-year-old virginal women raised in Amish country with all the domestic skills a man could want who don't know they're beautiful anymore. They just don't exist. And even if they do exist, they're more likely than not spoken for. But if you're an average guy who has above average taste in women, but aren't above average in value, then you're definitely in the overdose range. Understand this, gentlemen. Women no longer come ready-made for relationships like they did back in the 1950s. And because of this, it is incumbent on the man to build the woman into what he wants and needs. I'm extending my 55% off sale through the weekend. Get 55% off everything in my catalog this weekend only. Get on over to tsracademy.com and use promo code FLASH55 to get 55% off. Men in this community know and understand that how important this community is. You guys know how important it is, right? The RP space has really helped a lot of men live better lives. We've helped to wake men up to what's really going on out here in the dating market. And a few of us have even saved lives. Now, off the top of my head, Terrence Popp and Rollo Tomasi, in my mind, have probably saved the most lives of any other content creator out there. These guys have saved more men than we realize or acknowledge. And these two continue to save lives to this day. The RP community has represented a paradigm shift in the mindset of a lot of Western men. Each and every day, more and more men are waking up and acting accordingly in relationships of varying degrees. They're getting their physical fitness in order. They're getting their finances in order. They're improving themselves. They're doing everything in every way possible. They're improving themselves in every way possible, quantifiably or otherwise. However, there is a pervasive problem that arises as a result of guys like myself delivering our message almost, dare I say, too good? And that problem is Crimson Capsule overdose. Now, a lot of you guys might be thinking, wait a minute, Donovan. Hold on a second there. Hold on. How can you overdose on the Crimson Capsule? Aren't the ideas espoused in this community supposed to be helpful? Well, the answer to that second question is yes, our ideas are very helpful. However, a lot of men who find this corner of the internet do end up overdosing on this content. No, I don't mean they watch too much of it, because you can never consume too much RP. It is extremely important to consume this content as often as possible and as consistently as possible so one can avoid backsliding, so to speak. But a lot of men in our community suffer from what we call RP masturbation. That is, they watch Crimson Capsule content all day, every day, but they never take action. And if you consume enough of even this brand of content and don't really start making progress or changes, eventually you're going to watch enough of it to jade you to the point of not wanting to do anything about your current station in life. That's just the way of it. We're starting to see this in action as one of the fastest growing downsides of our community. Most men take what we say to heart and apply it accordingly, but there is also a percentage of men who are simply unable to break out of the anger phase. They're unable to get past the rage and frustration that comes with the discovery that they have been mentally castrated by the culture really since birth. Now, keep in mind, I want you guys to keep in mind, the anger phase is perfectly normal. Most guys who find the Crimson Capsule do go through the anger phase. When a man really starts to think back on his interactions with the women in his life, the women he's been romantically involved with or otherwise, it is perfectly natural to experience a little bit of fury when you first find this content. Your mother told you that girls are made of sugar, spice, and everything nice, but now you know otherwise. Thinking back on your negative experiences with women, you begin to realize that not only did the women you were romantically involved with mislead, mistreat, and cheat on you, you now know that your mothers, your sisters, your aunts, even your grandmothers also sold you a bad bill of goods. Guys, that kind of realization, that has the potential to cause any man to brood in anger for a good long while. But at some point, as a man, you have to move on. No, it's not easy to let go of the animosity you feel towards your ex-girlfriends, ex-wives, and the women related to you. But in order for a man to grow and mature mentally, it is absolutely paramount that you move past this phase of your Crimson Capsule renaissance. Because if you don't, you run the risk of stagnating and eventually ending up worse off than you were before you found this community. Listen, it's one thing to be a frustrated man looking for answers. It is quite another for a man to have found the answers but is still angry. There's so many men who have overdosed on the Crimson Capsule and don't even know it. So what I'm going to do, Dr. Sharpe, Dr. Donovan, I'm going to give you guys a few symptoms that you or someone you know either are or are close to falling into the OD category of this community. Symptom number 1. It is all you talk about. Trust me when I tell you guys, I understand how tempting it is to evangelize the Crimson Capsule, especially when you first find it. And while this is perfectly natural, as people love to share their stories of mental transformation and discovery, most of us pretty quickly find out that discussing this with, quote, civilians is useless at best, dangerous at worst. But a lot of guys simply cannot stop talking about this stuff even after negative consequences. Back when I lived in Vegas, a really good friend of mine went to drug and alcohol rehab, and the one thing he told me about his experience really resonated with me. He said, Donovan, what I learned in rehab was that when something you're doing affects you negatively, but you still can't stop doing it, you have a problem. And my buddy was right. Alcohol and drugs cost him his job. Alcohol and drugs cost him his wife. Alcohol and drugs cost him his family. And eventually his addiction cost him his home. And all the while his life is crashing down around him, he continued to drink and do drugs, even though he could see it dismantling his life. Make no mistake, the Crimson Capsule saves and improves lives, guys. There's no doubt about that. But when all you do all day is talk about hypergamy and branch swinging to your friends and family and coworkers, you're going to get a lot of pushback. And rather just living your life and working on yourself and letting your actions do the talking, you're more interested in talking about theories rather than actually doing things. Now, don't get me wrong here, guys. I'm not saying that you should keep your mouth shut at all times. If someone asks you a question about dating and relationships here in 2022, there is a way to make your point without coming off as a zealot. After all, you may actually, influence someone to Google search or look up the Rational Male and maybe their lives will change. But when every conversation you have with anyone on or offline is initiated by you telling them, dude, I'm so sick of dealing with modern women. Their hypergamy is out of control. You may be suffering from Crimson Capsule overdose. Symptom number 2, you argue with like-minded men. One of the great things about this community is its diversity. Right? We've got guys as young as Steph is Cold, all the way to guys as old as the late, great Kevin Samuels. We're racially diverse. We all come from different walks of life. The list goes on and on and on. Now, diversity breeds different ideas and or opinions on some of the same topics, right? For example, Coach Greg Adams is a strong proponent of never cohabitating with a woman, while guys like myself and Rollo acknowledge that even though cohabitation does come with risks, there are rewards and advantages to be had, so long as the foundation is laid correctly and your Crimson Capsule awareness is always front and center. But if you're a content creator or a content consumer who's always splitting hairs about the minuscule differences in one's line of thinking, then arguing with whoever is around, you might be suffering from Crimson Capsule overdose. Now, I want to make this clear. There is absolutely nothing wrong with spirited discussions about our differences in approach. These discussions make the community stronger, and it gives all involved added dimension to their own line of thinking. It is extremely important for men to exchange ideas with one another, even if they do not agree on some of the elements they're talking about. But there's a difference between a discussion and an argument. A discussion is simply a conversation where ideas are acknowledged and exchanged. An argument is when people stoop to underhanded debate tactics for the purpose of undermining and even insulting the other person to either make them look bad or clout chase. Arguments are also a breeding ground for ad hominem attacks, which really is no good for anyone. Now, a close derivative of this particular symptom is wanting content creators to debate one another. Guys who endorse this kind of thing are just looking for red meat. They want drama. They simply want to see men arguing with each other. And a telltale sign of this symptom is when you see things like, why are you afraid to debate with XYZ commentator, bro? When guys ask this, they're indirectly saying, you don't want to argue with creator XYZ because you're afraid you're going to look bad. Well, why would a debate make anybody look bad if both people came into the debate in good faith? I'll tell you why. Because the guy or guys who squawk about us debating do so in bad faith. They have no interest in learning anything. They simply want to use us as a come-up for their smaller channels, and I've fallen for this trap a few times. In this context, the word debate is really code for argue. And heaven knows we don't need any more arguments among men in this community. Spirited discussions? Yes. Healthy back and forths with different ideas and angles? You bet. But guys who want to argue with everybody, those are the ones that the media likes to highlight as an accurate representation of this community. No wonder why people on the outside think that we're a bunch of whiny freaking incels. Symptom number 3. You've become an RP caricature. If you're the guy who's always slaying, bitches ain't shit, or dude, that's not alpha, or that's beta behavior, bro, you might be experiencing crimson capsule overdose. Yes, most women in this part of the world are deplorable. Yes, relationships are circling the drain, and yes, there are men out here who are as soft as baby shit. But if you're the guy who sees everything in black and white, which is really this community's version of, if you see everything in blue and red and blue, which is this community's version of black and white, you've got a lot of growing up to do. It's that simple. Yes, the RP works. There's no doubt, but it also comes with nuance and context. No, I'm not saying that there's a purple area, not even close. But there are a lot of guys out there who take our talking points to the absolute extreme. And guess what? I used to be that guy. I was the bomb-throwing wannabe shock jock. I became a caricature. I was a clown. But fortunately, I grew out of that phase and began to refine my approach. And a little less than 3 short years later, things have never been better. Look, I understand that what we talk about here has the potential to elicit strong emotions. That's what it's designed to do, right? But a man needs the ability to channel those emotions into making changes for the better, not being some wannabe alpha male. Like Minister Jeff said a while back on the 6th, there are just too many of us who act like Crimson Capsule gangbangers. You know what I mean? Like too many of us who act like Crimson Capsule gangbangers. It's almost like we're in a gang. And if I'm being honest, I used to be one of them. And looking back, I can see how ridiculous it made me look. If you're experiencing this particular symptom, I would recommend getting off the grid for a few days, take stock, and make changes. Because at some point, being a clown eventually takes its toll on you and everyone around you. Symptom number 4. Let's go to the 4th symptom here. You have unrealistic expectations of women. If you are watching this right now, you are already well aware of the unrealistic expectations of modern women. They're all after what they describe as their perfect person. And like, we know who he is, right? He's the guy who's 6 feet tall, makes 6 figures, has a 6-foot dong, a 6-story house with a 6-car garage that's wrapped in movie star looks and porn star bedroom skills. Now, as ridiculous as that sounds to us, there are more men than we realize on this side of the gender aisle that have equally unrealistic expectations. A lot of guys like to proclaim, well, if she's not a virgin, I'm not committing, or if she messes up one time, I'm out the door. Now, it's one thing for a guy with endless options to demand these things, right? Cobra Tate kicked a bitch out because she forgot to bring him coffee. Okay, listen, if that's you, let the good times roll. You have to discriminate somehow to keep your time and your sanity when you have options like that. But most men don't have the options that allow them to dismiss women at that rate. No, I'm not suggesting that you lower your standards, but I do suggest that you raise your value. That way, you are more likely to attract the kind of woman you want, not the kind of woman you currently qualify for. We all know that most women don't come close to qualifying for the men they want. We know this. But there are a lot of men in this community who have overcorrected by disqualifying every woman for a potential relationship who isn't the perfect woman. Guys, I'm here to tell you, there are no 19-year-old virginal women raised in Amish country with all the domestic skills a man could want who don't know they're beautiful anymore. They just don't exist. And even if they do exist, they're more likely than not spoken for. But if you're an average guy who has above average taste in women, but aren't above average in value, then you're definitely in the overdose range. Understand this, gentlemen. Women no longer come ready-made for relationships like they did back in the 1950s. And because of this, it is incumbent on the man to build the woman into what he wants and needs. If that takes more work than you are willing to put in, I completely understand. You're getting no judgment from me. The things required these days for a strong, healthy, lasting relationship, they're very difficult. They're difficult to start and maintain. But too many men in this community are in search of a woman who is RP aware and knows how to be the perfect girlfriend. All women are going to mess up, guys. All women are going to make mistakes. They're women, it's going to happen. But expecting perfection and vocalizing it as much makes you look silly. Symptom number 5. You only watch podcasts that dunk on women. You're the guy who likes watching Myron Gaines cook these 304s on Fresh and Fit After Hours, but doesn't watch his Money Mondays podcast. You're the guy who loved watching Kevin Samuels humble black women every night, but have no idea that he was also an image consultant who was very good at his job and quite intelligent. Don't get me wrong. It is great fun watching Miami yacht thoughts getting humiliated by the truth. It's even more fun to actually be a part of it, as I have been more than a few times. But if the only videos you watch are the ones that talk negatively about women, you're going to overdose very quickly. Yes, there are many things awry with modern women. Nobody's disputing that. But believe it or not, there are women out there who do have redeeming qualities, however rare they may be. And if you're out here filling your headspace with nothing but negative content, then you run the risk of genuinely hating women. At that point, you'd actually really be a misogynist. So try to diversify your RP portfolio, guys, so you don't end up becoming a black-pilled doom and gloomer. That is a miserable existence. Be realistic, but don't be a doomer. It will affect you more than you realize and not in a good way, which leads me to the next symptom, which is closely related, which is you don't seek solutions. All you do is complain. Most people are aware of the phrase, admitting you have a problem is the first step in solving the problem. It's often used in reference with 12-step programs related to substance abuse, addicts, alcoholics, and so forth. Now, as far as I'm concerned, this community has done an incredible job pointing out and dissecting the issues that have plagued the Western Hemisphere for over the last half century plus. This step in the process was absolutely necessary. Otherwise, guys like me, Alpha Male Strategies, Myron and Fresh, Coach Greg Adams, we wouldn't be able to come along and offer solutions. But if you're a man who only watches content that talks about the scourge of effenism, cheating wives, paternity fraud, and so forth, you're going to definitely overdose on the RP. Do not get me wrong, gentlemen. There is value in watching this stuff. There is. It is intrinsic to your growth and evolution as a man. But when you only watch negative content, you start to become negative yourself. And before long, all you do is complain, and complaining is what class? A feminine trait. So while it is important to watch content that points out the dark side of female nature, it is equally important to watch content that talks about how to navigate it. Learning how to deal with modern women requires you to consume both the problems and the solutions. Otherwise, you end up hating women. And as I stated before, that is a miserable existence. In the end, you're going to do whatever you want with this information, guys. You are. Some men use what we discussed to improve their lives. Some men use it to learn how to become successful with women, and some use it for both reasons. But it is important to realize that even though taking the Crimson Capsule is something every man should do, it is possible to overdose. And when people overdose, they overcorrect. Let's take the presidential cycle since 1976 as an example. The Carter administration left a bad taste in people's mouths because of the inflation and the subsequent gas lines. Jimmy Carter was a good man, but his legacy was tarnished by the image of cars lined up for miles, waiting for just a few gallons of gas. The 1974 gas crisis happened on his watch. Because of that, people thought Jimmy Carter was soft and non-threatening, so they corrected this by electing Ronald Reagan in 1980. Now, Reagan proved to be a much tougher, hard-nosed president. Some of us remember his famous Gorbachev tear down this wall speech when we were kids. Well, Reagan served 2 terms in the Oval Office, then his vice president, George H.W. Bush, won the election in '88, essentially becoming an extension of the Reagan administration. But after 12 years of a Republican White House, the American people elected Bill Clinton, who was the polar opposite of Bush. Clinton, a hardline Democrat, served 2 terms, which led to the election of George W. Bush, a hardline Republican. Bush served 2 terms until the American people overcorrected again and elected ultra-left-leaning Barack Obama. After 8 years, we swung even further the other way and elected Donald Trump. Now, Trump only served 1 term until we overcorrected again, but this time we overcorrected too much. Because it's fairly clear that our current president doesn't know whether it's April, Halloween, or Thursday. Now, that's no slight on him because, I mean, let's give him some credit, guys. He does turn 80. He turns 80 years old 20 days after Halloween. Or was it 21 days? All jokes aside, Biden's election shows us how desperate people were to get as far away from the Trump administration as possible, and it appears to have backfired. And that is the danger of overcorrecting. Undergoing a renaissance of this magnitude does require a massive shift in your thinking, guys. There's no doubt about that. But as a man, you were born with the inherent ability to, as Kenny Rogers puts it, know when to hold 'em and know when to fold 'em. Taking the Crimson Capsule and living the RP life is absolutely necessary for a man to be truly content in this day and age. Just make sure you don't take the whole bottle. Otherwise, you end up with a guy like Brandon in office. And nobody wants that.